Hello, everybody. It's 3 minutes past 2. I'm late. I'm late starting work today. I'm Bill Richardson with you until 6 p.m. this evening. You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107. And this is the day that the Cello Festival begins. Perhaps you were in some coffee shop or library or some other public venue and were witness to the cello interventions which were taking place earlier today. Indeed, we had one here in this very studio. And all kinds of cello-related events happening over the course of the next several days through Sunday. Tonight, the gala opening concert at Westminster United Church. And that's going to be a swell event. It'll be my pleasure to be there and be the traffic cop. Colin Carr is one of the cellists who is in town for the Cello Festival and will be speaking in just about, say, 6 minutes and 35 seconds after you hear this music by Beethoven. There, good. Oh, you can hear this if you like. You probably heard it before. Hang on.
D major. Nice.
Is this for John?
No, this is with Tom Sauer, who was here last time I was here.
No, I remember.
And John and I are playing the A major, different one.
Oh, I know, yes.
Music by Beethoven, the first movement of the sonata for cello and piano in D major. The cellist Colin Carr at the piano, Thomas Sauer. And Colin Carr is among the many, many cellists gathering in Winnipeg this week for the Cello Festival, which begins in good and in earnest. Well, has begun in good and in earnest today, and the gala opening concert is tonight, 7:30 p.m. at Westminster United Church. Colin Carr with me in the studio. Hello.
Hello.
Very nice to meet you.
Great to be back.
Do you, we were, I should say, it's a little embarrassing, but we were chatting while that was on, but when you're actually able to hear yourself play, do you like to hear yourself play? Singers always say they don't, but I wonder if string players feel differently about it.
Well, bittersweet. Mixed feelings always, because we progress, we evolve, and we move on from where we were. So I rarely hear a recording and think that can't be improved upon because I've grown since.
But therein is the cause for something like optimism, don't you think? I mean, it's a reason for going on.
Absolutely. But sometimes, in an odd moment, actually, this is quite amusing. It was a radio station, actually, that asked me to recommend a movement of Bach for them to play on an occasion, something like this one. And so I sat down thinking I'd find them a nice movement. And I started from number 1, Prelude. And no, didn't like that. And so it went on. And I got to the end of number 6, Gigue, 36 movements. And there wasn't a single one that I thought, I'd love them to have that.
How did it finally work out?
I said, oh, you choose one.
What cello were you playing when you made that recording?
It must have been the one I have here now, because I've had this cello for 31 years. I got it in 1983. It's a Gafrilla, Matteo Gafrilla cello made in Venice in about 1730.
Have you also fallen into possession of the Zara Nelsova cello?
I did temporarily. There's a long and quite interesting story about that, which maybe isn't fit for radio, but I
or maybe
I
it is.
acquired it by devious, ill-conceived means, and I did actually have it for 2 years, very generously given to me by the Royal Academy of Music that ultimately owned the cello after Zara died. And it was just such a wonderful gift. And I won't tell you the whole story because it is quite long, but I thought, well, this will be the cello for me for life, because how often do you get an opportunity to play on a Stradivarius cello? And so I did everything to make that marriage work, and it just wasn't working. And yet somehow I thought, well, it has to work. And so I fought with this cello for these 2 years, and thinking that, well, I'll conquer it in the end, and we'll eventually be a happy marriage. And it never was. And actually, from day one, my wife told me, this isn't the cello for you. And I just wouldn't believe it. And then eventually I gave it back. And I was so relieved to have my cello back.
Is there, I mean, for lay people, it's, I mean, in a way you can understand it. You can understand what you just said. It's not the cello for you, but it sounds as though there's a quality of something that's almost mystical about it, you know? Or is it entirely a physical question and how the instrument sits with you as a player?
It is mysterious. I mean, the ideal feeling for an instrumentalist, particularly a string player, I think, is that feeling where you and the instrument and the music, and indeed the place you're playing, are all somehow one, bound up together as some inextricable work of art. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, I'm sure it happens from time to time.
Very rarely.
Very rarely, yeah.
Yes.
Probably a good thing.
But I do feel extremely attached to this cello. And I think I'm at my happiest in life when I'm sitting behind it.
You know, there's that story that's famously told about Jacqueline Dupre, about how when she was a little girl and by happenstance, I guess, happened to hear on the BBC somebody playing the cello, and how old was she, 2 or 3, I don't know. And she said, aha, that's the instrument for me. Did you have that kind of coup de foudre moment as well, or did somebody thrust it into your hands and say, here, this is the instrument for you?
No, I was a silly young man who had this idea that one day I would own a Gafrilla cello. That Gafrilla was the cello for me. And it didn't really matter what cello it was, or whose it was, or how I got it, or how much it cost. I was going to have a Gafrilla. So a Gafrilla became available. This was, as I said, in about actually it was 1983, and it was in Chicago. I was in San Francisco at the time playing, and I got on the next plane because I'd heard about this particular cello, and I went to play on it. And I suppose it was mind games, because I told myself I was going to love this cello, but I did indeed. From the moment I played it, I thought this has an extraordinarily beautiful sound, and it's very special. And so I just did everything I possibly could to buy it. And it was expensive then. It's completely out of reach now. But then I was only 25, I think, at the time, and I didn't have the means to pay for it. But it was a private sale. It was an old cellist in Chicago, and we worked out a deal. He gave me 5 years to pay for it. I didn't have the faintest idea how I was going to pay for it, but I said, deal, shook his hand, and took the cello away. And somehow it worked out. But you did remind me of this. There is a story of Haimovitz. You know, I'm sure you know this, and I'm sure lots of your listeners know it. Of someone saying to Haimovitz, "What an extraordinary instrument you have!" And Haimovitz lifts the instrument up and sort of shakes it and says, "Well, I don't hear anything." So I think instrument and player do have to bond.
But when you cast your mind back to the very beginning, long before you'd even heard of a Gafrilla cello, pardon me, hard to say, for me, what was it about the instrument itself that drew you to it? Did you, or were you drawn to it? Did somebody say to you, play this, and you did?
It was that. I was only 5 when I started playing. I couldn't tell the difference between a cello and what I was generally more interested in. But no, I had a mother who decided I was going to play the cello, and she saw it through. It was a good 8 years of torture and suffering before I realized that this was my love.
Do you think, I mean, that's, you know, it seems like a long time to spend not enjoying something, working as hard at it as you must have had to do to get into the Menuhin School and so on.
Well, I don't think I worked that hard. I was probably more interested in football, which is topical because this week I'm also rather interested in football. I just saw an amazing game today.
Did you? Who was playing?
It was Holland against Australia.
Who won? I haven't had.
Well, it was. Of course, no one gave Australia a chance of winning this game, but they were 2-1 up, and they played just incredibly well, so above themselves, and they gave the Dutch a really, really good game. It ended up being 3-2 to Holland, but I was practicing actually in front of the television in the hotel. and not concentrating very hard on my music.
I have to say, I find it kind of encouraging to hear. It makes me feel not so bad about having the TV on when I'm doing, or the radio on, or any other distracting thing when I'm doing something that is supposed to require my full concentration, like my income tax.
Right. Yeah. Well, I used to do this a lot. It was actually with cricket that I did, which is a more appropriate sport to watch while you're practicing, because it is slower, of course, and there are many more breaks between the action. But I used to be quite good at that sort of multitasking, and now I don't think I was actually very good at either today.
When you're a runner, I know. Have you done marathons?
I did one marathon about 3 years ago, only because I just wanted to know that I could. And I trained hard for it. Well, I always ran every day, so it wasn't that huge a leap up to do a marathon. I'd always run more or less 6 miles, 10K a day. And so I just had to add my weekly mileage a little bit. And so I did the marathon in Maine, in Portland, Maine.
Oh.
And it was a beautiful day. It was a perfect day for running. It was cool and crisp and dry and sunny. And it was just a great experience. There were thousands of people out cheering. And let me brag just for 1 second. I had a goal of finishing the marathon in less than 4 hours. And I didn't know how fast it would be, because I'd actually never run one. And so I went off, and all these people lining the route, they give you such an adrenaline rush. And so I just went chugging along, and it really wasn't hard at all. And you went through the TAFE in 3 hours and 11 minutes.
Holy smokes, so, that's amazing.
It was really incredible. And I haven't done one since, and I'm sure I won't do another one.
Why ever not, since you've had such great success?
Well, because I'm older now and have more aches and pains. And
you're 3 years older. That's not so much. Well, you are younger than I by a few years, but I mean, I can't imagine it for myself, I have to say.
Well, it was a wonderful thing, and the way runners describe marathons, it's all true. Mm-hmm. It's a high like no other.
In your other life, in your cello playing life, when you're doing something like recording the whole cycle of Beethoven sonatas, or doing, as I know you've done, the 6 Bach cello suites, is there a sense of something marathon-like about that?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot in common about the preparation, actually, because playing the 6 suites in one concert is not something that we do every day.
No.
And it does demand a special kind of training where you do actually have to sort of work them up and play more of them in one day, and then eventually just perhaps do the whole thing to make sure that you can. And make sure that you peak at the right time and that you're ready for it. And also not to play too much on the day itself. So you wouldn't, for instance, on the day of a marathon, go on a 6-mile run in the morning before the race. So it's a similar thing.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about how today you were practicing while you had the World Cup on, but I'm assuming that's a fairly extraordinary circumstance for your practicing regime. But is it pretty rigorous, your practicing still?
I love practicing. I still am a practicer, although nothing like the number of hours that I used to put in. Mm-hmm. These days, I like to do perhaps 3 hours a day, something like that, which is probably more than many of my colleagues of my generation. I mean, usually I think people feel that they've paid their dues by the time they get to be our age, and that they can just sort of enjoy the fruits of their labors. But for me, the labor, to a great extent, is the fruit. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very happy playing the cello, practicing hard, even if it's not for a particular concert. It's just something I do every day, as is running.
Do you play, say, scales every day? Is that part of it?
Not every day, but I do very much see the value of scales, and I certainly encourage students to do it. But particularly with the same kind of love and warmth and emotional attachment that I feel I have when I play great music. I think just playing scales as exercises, sort of nose to the grindstone in a mundane and somewhat detached way, is quite useless.
How about scale-based exercises like the Popper exercises or something?
Those etudes, I think they're excellent. Taken all together as an opus, they really do cover everything that you could possibly need in your technique as a cellist. And there was a time when I would go through. There are 40 of those in the high school book, I think it's called, and I would just go through them 1 to 40. And it would, I don't know how long it would take, maybe a year or something like that. And I felt quite enriched at the end of it.
Is this a fairly rare opportunity to find yourself in a place like, well, Winnipeg in this case, with this many other cellists?
Oh, it's wonderful. I love it. I mean, the Cello Festival is now it's an institution. I mean, not yet this particular Winnipeg Festival. This is only the second one, of course, but as a genre, the Cello Festival has been around for a long time. And there used to be cello congresses in the States, and then there was the Cello Festival in Manchester that went for many years. Now that's over, and the Biennale in Amsterdam has taken over. Ralph Kirschbaum started one a year or two ago in California, in LA, which I think is going to become a every 3-year thing. And this, what you have here in Winnipeg, looks like it's, I hope anyway, here to stay. It was such a success last time. I have great memories of the one 3 years ago here, and I hope that this week lives up to it. But having all these cellists together is just really, really fun. And I think we're a pretty good breed. We like to be together, and we like to hear one another and see what everybody's up to. We're able to admire and respect each other, and it doesn't seem like there's any animosity, enmity between people. I think that we're just a very happy bunch. I mean, you always hear about cellists being collegial and comradely like this in a way that perhaps doesn't apply to any other instruments. And don't ask me why that is. I have no idea. But it's always been fun to be at these festivals. It does add a certain amount of pressure to play this music in front of your colleagues, music that they know just inside out, and you're asking for trouble. I mean, especially with certain repertoire, where, I mean, the Bach suites is probably the best example, but you just go and you try to be fearless and be yourself and have a good day at the office and see what happens.
Well, and it's not as though you're coming to the thing with, let's say, no track record, after all, it must be said. But, you know, I was thinking that, just to wrap this up, I should let you go because I know you've got whacks of stuff to do. But it seems to me that for people like me, a layperson who enjoys music, that there are two instruments that have a kind of universal appeal. One would be, it's hard to imagine anybody disliking them. One would be the harp, and the other would be the cello. And I'm wondering what it is about the cello and the sound that can be coaxed from it by somebody who knows what he or she is doing that we find so resonant somehow. It is resonant, maybe that's what it is, but there's a quality, a kind of human quality about it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's a question that I've been asked many times, and the stock answer, which I've heard many times and which I've also given myself many times, is that it's the range of the instrument, being from the lowest male voice to the highest female voice, and so that's its human quality. And I think that is true, but there's more to it than that, of course. And I think it's partly a physical thing, just the shape of the instrument. It's a human shape, and you sort of wrap your arms and legs around it, and so it's a very physical instrument in that way. And so you do get attached physically as well. And just as far as the sound, which is the question you were really asking, I've always felt that the cello is the instrument for singing par excellence, more than any other instrument in existence. So it's singing and crying. I think that it has its tender side, its loving side, but it's so good at expressing anguish as well. And people respond to that, of course, if it's not too much.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of intensity of human feeling is really what the cello is so good at.
It's curious, too. It's one of those instruments that, for as long as I've been paying attention to music, seems to have been played as much by women as by men. It's quite... The divide is very equal in that way, don't you find?
I haven't ever given that much thought. Is that really true? I mean, of course, until relatively recently, the major orchestras didn't have any women.
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly, in the last 20, 30 years, I think you're absolutely right, an equal divide. Before that, actually, it was considered ungainly for a woman to play the cello, because of course you do have to open your legs to play the thing. So women used to play side saddle the way that they rode a horse.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How peculiar.
That way they could keep their legs firmly locked together.
As propriety would require.
Yes.
Did you, tomorrow is the Zara Nelsova scholarship, the prize in the afternoon at Eckardt-Grammatte Hall. 3 cellists will be vying is quite the correct word. 3 cellists are going to be playing, and one will, I guess, walk away with the prize. But we talked about your connection with her Stradivarius cello. Did you ever meet her or know her? Yes.
I did indeed. And in fact, she was on the jury. I think it was 1980 or 1981, when I was a young thing playing the Naumburg competition in New York, and I won that competition. And so, in fact, we went around to Zara's apartment on Central Park West after the competition for a party, and she was so wonderful to me, such a warm creature who was just so generous and friendly, and invited me to always come and see her when I was in town. And I often did. I used to go around for tea and chat with her, and it was always a great pleasure.
What did you learn from that? We're not talking about cello lessons, but just the business of being in the world with a cellist like that. What do you take away from that?
Well, just her kindness to a junior, I won't even say colleague, because I really don't think I could call myself that at that time. But her kindness to a young cellist was really eye-opening. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's not just my relationship with Zara that has made me feel that I want to be the same, but I love teaching. I've taught since just around that time, actually. I began teaching in Boston at the New England Conservatory in '83 and haven't stopped teaching at that college university level since then. Mm-hmm. So I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of students in the meantime, and I do my best for them. I try to encourage them and to see the good in them.
All right. Well, we've just scratched the surface paint on your very bright and shiny career. I wish we had more time to talk, but I'm going to release you from this, it must be said, airless studio and into the humid Winnipeg afternoon. This is Colin Carr, who is here for the Cello Festival, which has begun today in Winnipeg and runs through Sunday. And you're giving a master class on Friday and then taking part in the Beethoven on Saturday evening and then playing the Elgar on Sunday night. So
Also a Bach suite on Thursday evening.
I beg your pardon, the Bach suite, yes, but the candlelit Bach suite
That's right.
evening, all 6 suites, but played by 6 different cellists.
Yes.
So you don't have to shoulder the
right.
whole burden. Okay, wonderful to have this chance to talk to you, and by way of en voix, we'll play more Beethoven from this recording of those sonatas with Thomas Sauer. Thank you very much.
All right.
Excellent.
That's fun. You make it very easy.
Oh, no, well,
He's good.
Yeah.
And all his students rave. Paul Marleyn was one of his students.
Oh,